Good morning, everyone who's joined so far. We're just going to wait a few minutes for a few more people to join. We're starting in about 1 to 2 minutes. If you want to grab yourself a quick drink, now is the time to do it. Right, good morning, everyone. It's the second presentation that I've done recently around sort of an introduction to security. We're focusing today specifically about ransomware and Rage Against a Ransomware Machine, and it is a big machine. We're going to go over a few different areas around it. I'm the host today. My name is Richard Fowkes, and I'm the Chief Solution Consultant for Exclusive Networks. So if you do have any questions as I go through this presentation, please put it in the chat box and I'll try and deal with it at the end. And we'll be sending the presentation around afterwards. So set the agenda. So what we're going to cover today. We're going to go over setting the scene. So we're going to talk a bit about what markets we're seeing, what's happening with ransomware, why is it happening so much, why is there so many people getting hit by it, and what's the motivation for it. Understand a few of the news stories, what's happened there, what is ransomware, and then looking at how technology has evolved and what organizations need to think about to try and minimize the risk that is posed by ransomware, because unfortunately it's not going anywhere. So ransomware, it is big business. Different reports have different views on how much it is, from 20 billion to 50 billion. And the cost itself isn't just looking at people paying the ransom, it's also looking at downtime, it's looking at time to recover, it's looking at those who haven't paid it. And the damage it's caused by ransomware with regards to how it works is huge. I guess the biggest thing, while we've talked about ransomware and companies being targeted for it, ransomware doesn't discriminate. It doesn't just target large organizations, it doesn't just target small companies. It targets individuals, every single size organization, and it's around causing damage. Like obviously there's the big numbers, the 50 million largest ransom demand, but the regular ones are $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 dollars, targeting individuals, which few people can afford. And a part of the challenge is as well, paying it doesn't necessarily mean you get all your data back. So again, it's accepting the risk or not accepting the risk, and what does that actually look like? The other thing we've seen as well is obviously with COVID, with people working remotely, people having more time on their hands, and unfortunately where we're at with regards to the economy is that the attacks getting more and more frequent, and needing less and less skill sets to actually execute. So what we've seen is bigger companies getting hit by more and more attacks. Obviously we had the NHS being hit 4 years ago. Again, it wasn't a sophisticated attack. The challenge is if you get hit by 5,000 attacks, only one needs to get through. The attackers only need to get lucky once, and security teams, companies need to be lucky all the time. So because of this challenge we had with people working remotely, people were looking for new ways of accessing it, and the accessibility of ransomware, and all ransomware is looking at, and I'll go into a bit more detail in a second, is how do I get something on your device, and then I look at what data you've got there, and then I encrypt it. It does a lot more than that, but in a simplistic form, that's what it does. It looks how to get to your device, and once I'm on there, I'm going to look at all your data and I make it encrypted. Lots of different versions of ransomware, lots of different challenges, but the reason why it's just so much money is it's painful. Having your data encrypted, it is very, very difficult to recover it, to actually get your laptop working again and to start over. So it's painful for the IT team, it's painful for the actual people who've been affected by it, and it's just not going to go away anywhere, unfortunately. But organizations that have been hit, some of these companies have got some of the best security in place. Apple themselves weren't the ones who were hit, but one of their suppliers were. And again, you've got the supply chain ransomware attack. You've got ransomware targeting as from a denial of service attack. If you do not pay me X amount of money, I'll stop your website working. You've got organizations getting hit constantly. And the challenge comes into it is how much you're willing to wait to fix it, or how much do you need to pay to get it resolved. And the other bit as well is it's not just encrypting the data. If they've got access to the data, it means they can steal the data. You can steal the data, then you've got that fear of what happens if they start releasing it, what happens if they start sharing it. And it's never going to go away, unfortunately. It's not going to stop because cyber attacks are never going to stop. But the ease of access to it, the ease to use it, find it, and actually share it with other people, it's just unprecedented. If you look at the amount of service level agreements are out there for ransomware attacks and the cost of actually launching one, it's very, very little. And the challenge is it only needs one person in that organization to click it or open that email or have that drive-by download or to have that USB stick they put in. It's so easy to hit a company, and then unfortunately there's limited options of how to deal with it. We'll go through about those in a second. So ransomware affects everyone, big companies, small companies, and medium companies. But what actually is ransomware? So ransomware it's just a bit of malware that's looking at stopping you accessing your data and your devices, whether that is a laptop or whether that's in Office 365 or in a cloud application or whether that's in the on-site database. It'll stop you being able to access the data you need to do your job. And because it's usually done by a group of people, they will then demand ransom. Basically, if you get access for it, to get a key to unlock that data. Now, the other challenge is that because they're usually well organized, they will understand how far to go with the ransomware, how many machines they want to talk to. The fact that ransomware is written now to understand, right, what's all the other laptops I can talk to, what is everything else I can go to, and then start moving across from device to device to trying to find out where your data is, to encrypt it, to cause as much damage as possible, is unfortunately evolution of ransomware. Ransomware no longer sits one laptop and activates. It gets as much as it possible, covers as much of the network as possible before it activates. And the reason for that is I want to cause as much damage. If I'm an attacker, I want to cause you as much pain as possible because then you're more likely to pay the ransom. If I hit one person's laptop, while it's annoying, it's easy enough to fix. If I hit 500 laptops plus your backup, you've limited options other than building it back up again from scratch. And obviously, no security product is 100%. So you need to look at how many different layers are there going to be, how's it going to get delivered, and what areas I'm most concerned about. Is that saying that the user's the last line of defense? And a lot of the cases they are. But we can't also not have any security in place because the attacks are going to get more and more evolved and more advanced. And it's not just a generic email now, it's a targeted, tailored email based on your interests, your likes. Regular phishing attacks are becoming more and more common to see what people click on, and also creating better and better looking emails. We've all seen those text messages that says you've got a package waiting from Royal Mail. The websites look really good. The data on it looks really believable. And it's that challenge of, if this can get past all your security products in place, then you're relying on the users to understand how to minimize that risk. So the question we get asked most often is, should I actually pay the ransom? Obviously, from a law enforcement side, they're not going to condone it. They're not going to encourage it. The challenge is if you're a small company and you've got your data encrypted, can you afford not to have it paid? And it's that devil's advocate thing. Obviously, I would never say you should pay the ransom, but it's, can you survive without it? If you can do, then definitely don't pay it. If it's a case of life or death or other elements of it, then obviously you've got to look at, do I pay the ransom or not? Now, obviously, there is help and support out there. There's lots of tools out there that people can use to do the decryption and look at understanding what's going on with regards to the ransomware. And there's obviously lots of different tool sets out there. The other thing as well is obviously there's no guarantee you'll get your data back. And that's a big thing as well. Once you've paid it once, you are more likely to get hit again. The other challenge you face as well is, it's all right me saying, well, you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't pay for it. But again, people have got companies to run, people have got organizations to run. What I'd recommend having is a strategy in place to accept the fact that we will get hit by ransomware eventually. What does it look like? How do we recover it? What is our disaster plan if this happens and we can't access this data? If we can't do this, what do we have in place for it? And as company leaders and organizational leaders will know, that is part of the disaster challenge. That is part of the what if scenario. How do I deal with the situation? Now, business continuity is what we're talking about. And when you think about cyber attacks, you think about protect, detect, and then recover. And it's the same thing for ransomware. You want to try and prevent as many of these attacks getting through as possible. But as I've said already, you can't prevent everything. So the stuff that can't get through, you then got to focus on detecting it, understanding how it's gone through, where it's gone to, what other devices have been affected by it. And then looking at how do you recover? So what is a recovery strategy? Do we have separate backup locations? Do we have a third-party company managing our data backup recovery elements of it? Do we have it in-house? And then understanding at what point you trigger that, because what you also don't want to be doing is recovering the ransomware over and over again because it's already in your backups. And we've seen that before where people who've got a good strategy and a plan in place haven't checked when the malicious code got in and literally recovering ransomware after ransomware and can't get up and running again. So areas people need to think about stuff like the endpoint protection. So what am I doing to protect these devices? What's my strategy to look at the most targeted device, which is going to be the endpoint? Looking at email. If you think about how malicious code is delivered, it's going to be via email. Understanding a bit about the identification authentication solutions. So again, if you think about how it's going to be delivered, everything we use with regards to the desktops, with regards to applications, this one, is all going to be delivered by an identity. There is a lot of solutions out there which talk about user identity and Active Directory. All links back to identification, and the only way I'm going to get access to your network is by trying to be someone on there. And unfortunately, staff and people, and we're all guilty of it once or twice, will reuse the same email address and the same password to access something. Reason why is we're not robots. We can't remember 20,000 different emails or 20,000 different passwords. We are creatures of habit. So again, looking at how I make sure it is you accessing the network or accessing the devices is really important. But at the end of the day, having a good backup and disaster recovery plan is one of the most important parts. If there isn't a good strategy about how you're going to recover it, then that one time it gets through is when you're going to notice it. And no matter how good your security is, eventually something will get through. Understanding what the network detection response strategy is as well. How am I going to identify and who's responsible for it? Because a lot of this is delegating. Who's responsible for it? Is it the firewall team's job? Is it the endpoint team's job? Is it the CISO's job? Is it the security team's job? Is it Larry, who we outsource our IT to? Whose responsibility it is? And that's part of the strategy, is building out, right, in this scenario, who deals with what? Because while it is painful, it's not the end of the world. It's not that everything's been destroyed, everything's gone. Hopefully you've got a backup strategy, which means it's located in A, B, and C. You then just need the way of executing it and initiating that recovery plan. But it's all about how they're going to deliver it. And we're seeing it from advanced email phishing, so spear phishing, where they are specifically targeting individuals based on what they follow on LinkedIn, what they follow on Facebook, what they follow on Instagram. So it's really, really targeted. And it can be down to the level of actually understanding what your gamer tag is. So if you play on an Xbox and your gamer tag is, I don't know, Dave123, and your email address is associated to it, they can find that and send you a warning saying your email's about to be locked. More often than not, people will click on it. People will fall for it because of how well these are structured and because they have some element of your information on there. And email phishing isn't always going to get picked up by security tools. So again, it's educating staff and understanding that. Also, people getting tricked to, it's the IT team. We've noticed an issue. Can you set up an RDP for us, a remote desktop protocol? Here's the link for it to use. And people will do it because, again, we trust people in authority. There's those experiments where people are wearing yellow jackets near a sports event and people are going to them asking questions. They had nothing to do with a sports event, but because we believe they are a bit of authority, we respond to it. And then it's trying to build a bit of distrust between people who aren't expecting it and understanding how to deal with it and how to live with it. Drive-by downloads are painful in the sense that there's not necessarily an executable, There's nothing that most solutions can detect. And again, we've seen an evolution in endpoint products, seen an evolution in email, trying to look at how I minimize the risk from drive-by downloads. But again, we've gone from an age of pure software executables to actually, there's nothing there. It's targeting the operating system. It's really, really hard to spot that and actually do anything about it. You've got things like pirated software as well. Hopefully in the corporate network, you're saying, no, you can't use that. But actually, with a lot of bring your own devices, with a lot of organizations using multiple different locations, there's always a chance that pirated software could be used by one of your staff members. That is an easier thing to target, or target something that isn't properly licensed. My personal favorite, those removal media ones. It happens a lot, usually in places that are fairly trustworthy. There was an example of this happening to a police force in America where someone just left a few USB sticks. Someone picked one up and plugged it into their laptop. Obviously, it was designed for that. And once it was then plugged in, it then activated and started encrypting the data. It does sound very old school, but people are very trusting and will do this sort of element of it. So again, it's how do you minimize the risk from things like removable media devices? How do I only trust the right ones? So trying to stop the spread is obviously looking at these different areas. So if we think about endpoint protection, we're thinking about not just prevention, but also detection and response. There's no point just stopping the attack on the endpoint. It's also understanding if it has gone through, how do I detect it quick and how do I respond? It's also looking at how email talks to my endpoint. Because if we think about how we all communicate, we all still communicate via email. So actually having the email linked to the endpoint makes sense. This all should link together and all talk to each other. Because if I've not seen it on my email, I've not seen it on my endpoint, it's like if the tree falls and I was around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's the same thing. If I've had multiple different things not see it, is this actually really attack, or is this something that's benign, or is it actually something I need my team to look into? And again, understanding identification and authentication. So how do I make sure my remote workforce can do their job remotely? And make sure we've got a good strategy around backup and disaster, the NDR side of it, and then what is my strategy for ransomware? Because unfortunately, it's not going to go anywhere. It's only going to increase, and we're going to see more and more attacks from it over time. As we said in the previous presentation, there's around about 2,600 security products out there. So it's not a challenge of security products not being there. It's trying to find the right ones. And as a minimum, you want to be having endpoint protection and detection, email security, and backup and disaster recovery. Identification and authentication is a really, really sensible thing to go for, and I'd always recommend it. But again, I accept budget isn't unlimited for everyone, and it's trying to pick out your priorities. So thinking about how you work as an organization, if you've got multiple little offices and multiple locations, looking at things like secure service edge or SASE. So again, what we have seen is people trying to connect from one location through multiple different firewalls and causing lots and lots of issues. We've also seen it targeting things like OT devices. So OT looks at operational technology. So if you think about oil rigs or traffic light systems, they operate in a specific way. They have a specific set of protocols. And what we've seen is ransomware specifically targeting those devices. And again, for that is more about the prevention side of it. And if it does get through, how do I minimize the spread? So you've then got this element of what's called segmenting. So literally putting a firewall in place between different locations on the network, whether that is an OT device, whether that is a virtual device, whether that's the cloud. It's trying to make sure that if attacks do get through, I minimize the amount of damage it can cause. Part of the challenge is obviously how fast things move. So again, it's trying to understand, is the products I've got currently suitable for my new way of working remotely, using multiple applications, using multiple software? And if I was to be targeted, can they actually get to the backup, or is the backup separate? Is it got a separate responsibility? Is it got separate access rights? Having a good backup and disaster recovery plan is essential for when it does happen. And obviously, unfortunately, as I said before, nothing's 100%. So again, it's trying to have those solutions in place to minimize that damage. And I recommend looking at the products you've got. Is there a way to get them to talking to each other? Because most products now have got APIs to help them work with other products. If you look into that and understand where you've got your weaknesses and where your strengths are, it'll help you plan how the attacker would target you. Because as an attacker, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my research. If I'm serious about targeting you, I'll do my research and look at it, as well as having the generous one, which is I'm just going to send out 75,000 emails offering everyone a free Costa coffee. You'd be amazed about the number of people who want a free Costa coffee, or other coffee shops are available. But it does happen, and it's because we want free things. People want to do it. And targeting Daisy in reception or Tim in reception, they're the ones who are going to click on it. They're the ones who are going to do it because they haven't been trained any better. So again, part of the responsibility is trying to train staff up to understand this is bad, and there are tools out there to help with that, but also make sure you've got security in place to minimize the damage if they do that, if they do click on that link, if they do click on that document. And it's not just people in reception, it's CEOs, it's CISOs, it's senior people. We all are character habits, and unfortunately people make mistakes. So again, understanding the user risk and preventing that is an important security strategy. So what's next? So obviously we've talked about ransomware today. We're going to do another session on 17th of August about heading the hybrid clouds. We'll be talking about what elements you think about building hybrid clouds, what are the challenges you're going to be facing, and some of the security risks that's going to come from moving data from what's traditional on-premise to utilizing cloud in multiple different locations. So hopefully that's been a useful 20-odd minutes of your time. If you do have any questions, I said please send them across to me. My contact details are there. But thank you very much for joining today, and yeah, thank you very much.